Hey everyone, my name is Brandon, and did you know that listening to metal actually reduces depression, lowers your heart rate, and your blood pressure? Or maybe you didn't know that metalheads tend to be a lot smarter. Now, I may be biased due to the fact that I'm a metalhead myself, but listening to metal does not actually make you smart. What I just described was a case of the cherry picking fallacy, a logical fallacy in which an individual chooses data that supports their argument and ignores data that contradicts it. It is a flaw and can be seen in many popular articles pertaining to any research today. It is extremely biased and totally leaves the audience in the dark when it comes to knowing the entire truth. In fact, many peer-reviewed articles and scholarly articles try to minimize this fallacy in their work. So now that we got the drift of what the cherry-picking fallacy is, why is it so bad? Well, for starters, it neglects data that can help an individual know what the entire truth is. It also provokes soldier mindset or motivated reasoning. And lastly, it can make an individual lose credibility and trustworthiness. So in this speech, I'm going to be talking about the harms of neglecting data, motivated reasoning, and the credibility and trustworthiness of an individual. So let us begin with the first topic. The dangers of confirmation bias can cause an individual to make poor, biased decisions. In an article called Confirmation Bias, How It Affects Your Organization and How to Overcome It by Patrick Healy, he begins to talk about CEOs who have fallen victim to confirmation bias. And as a result, they are stating that they're not letting the data do the talking, and he's making their teams develop processes that are going to provoke certain questions and certain answers to what the CEO wants to hear. And as a result, efficiency and progress will never be made because the CEO is not opening his mind to different possibilities and outcomes to help him grow his company. And it only gets worse in the medical field. In an article called How Does Confirmation Bias Work by Kendra Cherry, she begins to talk about the dangers of confirmation bias and gives a plethora of examples of confirmation bias. And one text that really caught my attention was the text about a doctor who misdiagnosed their patient. And as you can imagine, this patient went on a rampage looking for answers and evidence to help him support the idea of him having a certain disease, when in reality he did not, overlooking any evidence that contradicted it, which can obviously put a huge toll on his mental health. And next we talk about motivated reasoning. I don't know about you guys, but I find TED Talks to be very interesting, informative, and entertaining. So I obviously had to include a speech called Why You Think You're Right, Even When You're Wrong by Julia Galef. And this speech basically talks about the two different mindsets, soldier mindset and scout mindset, and how people should really open up their minds to different possibilities and hone in on that scout mindset. Galef also gives an example of how a Jewish officer in the French army was wrongfully convicted of espionage for a different country. And as you can imagine, during those times where prejudice and discrimination was very prevalent, the entire army blamed him and tried to find evidence that only supported his culpability. Long story short, they were wrong. And this could have ended this man's life, all because the army or the soldiers did not want to open up their minds to the possibility that it could have been somebody else and that they didn't want to let go of their ego. And although Galef is most known for her speech about these different mindsets, Liz Connor begins to talk about how people who have the scout mindset are better at getting things right. And this could obviously be due to the fact that they are willing to open up their minds to different possibilities and outcomes and are willing to accept defeat when they are wrong. Lastly, we're going to be talking about the credibility and trustworthiness of an individual. Do you guys know any conspiracy theories or believe in any conspiracy theories? Yup, that's where we're going with this. In an article called Suppressed Evidence by David Johnson, he talks about how conspiracy theories really rely on suppressed evidence to make their claims sound much more believable. This is why we tend not to believe them, because they have total disregard for science and logic and could potentially put someone's life in danger because who is trying to seek the truth because they are living in ignorance. And I'm going to give a personal experience of mine. I'm a huge car enthusiast. I love cars that are stick shift and I love cars that are highly tunable. And when I was searching for my second car, I came across this Mazda Speed 3. And it had the works. Big turbo, it was eco-friendly, and it had a 6-speed manual transmission. And the guy selling me this car was just naming some really cool things like transmission mounts, BC Racing coilovers, which are extremely expensive, and the list keeps on going on. But what the guy forgot to mention, or what he purposely did not mention, was the fact that the engine was totally rebuilt. The car was running rich, and there was a warp in the turbo. And this ended up blowing up in the middle of the highway. And this man works in an auto body repair shop, and I automatically lost trust in him and his work because he put my brothers and lives in danger, and a huge dent in my wallet. And that made me question his ethics. Like, is this how he treats his customers, and is this the quality of his work? So to sum up, the cherry picking fallacy is not a fallacy you really want to slip into because it neglects data, it provokes motivated reasoning or that soldier mindset, and it makes you lose credibility and trustworthiness as an individual. So reducing your depression, lowering your heart rate and blood pressure, all really comes down to a combination of good diet, healthy lifestyle, and reducing stress. Becoming smarter is a practice and comes with a ton of studying and different encounters of different situations. But that doesn't mean you have to eliminate metal from your life. Maybe just give it a listen. You might be happier that you tried it out. See what I did there? Thank you all for listening.